That is a big flower.
If you scan that plant, I'll be able to inform you whether it will be safe to eat.
About that. If you're looking for your next open world survival fix, then this might be for you. Hey people, Voice talking to you, and today we're checking out Blind Descent, a new sandbox survival game where we explore an alien world beneath the surface of Mars. If you want to check this game out for yourself or see my full playthrough stream, there are links to both down in the description. We are Pathfinder, a member of an expedition sent to explore a massive cavern uncovered below an expedition site on Mars. Now I have no idea about any of the deeper backstory here, and the game doesn't really elaborate on things like what we're digging for, so I'll give you my assumptions later. Bear with me. When the elevator lowering us into the cave suddenly collapses, we wake up injured, alone, and without a helmet. Instead of asphyxiating like a normal human or climbing the apparent 10 feet or so back out of the hole, our snarky smartwatch encourages us to head deeper into the cavern to search for our missing crew members. Here we discover an entirely unknown alien ecosystem lush with colorful and terrifying plants, teeming with strange organisms, and somehow producing its own weather, including sunlight and rain? In the face of this stunning but dangerous new world, our watch is our only guide, and whoever programmed it should be fired because the first thing it does is direct us to eat a toxic plant. As we discover new plants and animals, we can use our hand scanner to identify them and uncover if they have any potential uses. And this place is filled with crazy alien species like rabbits, palm trees, and onions. Yeah, the devs really need some inspiration or something. The vast majority of everything we scan here will be marked as originating from Earth, so lots of the interactable plants are just mundane species or something that looks slightly different with a terribly bland name like alien corn. Now, that isn't to say that everything is just a knockoff of terrestrial stuff. We do get to see some weird and nasty varieties like bulbous shrubs, gross seeds with tentacles, and whatever this thing is. But to survive down here, we can't rely on just gathering seeds. Well, I mean, actually we can, but it takes forever to pull them out of their fruits, so let's just make a camp instead. The building and crafting UI reminds me a lot of Green Hell or Sons of the Forest, but less tactile. We'll need a campfire to cook food and boil water, chests to store things, and a bed to sleep in. Most materials can be stashed in our grid-based inventory, but larger items like logs or branches will need to be carried by hand, which can take a while. So you'd better get to work. Craft yourself an axe and start swinging. The tree cutting uses this voxel system that makes chopping pretty frustrating. But the trees also have a meaningless health bar to make things more confusing. Whatever happens, make sure you're ready to sleep by the time night falls, because otherwise you may find yourself at the mercy of small, obnoxious hummingbirds that love nothing more than to dive bomb straight into your butthole. These nightly raids aren't very difficult or interesting, so as of now, building a proper base is more of a nuisance than anything else. Plus, the building system is pretty rough. There are a few simple structures and workstations with the most basic of textures, but the snapping is weird, and for some reason the stairs put you just high enough to be unable to walk through a door. Actually, the collision in general is pretty weird, and if you want to join the playtest, you'd better get used to weird invisible objects, because you're going to be walking into them a lot. On the other hand, not long after you build your first structure, some sort of bizarre pink fungus will show up. According to our snarky AI companion, this pink goop will eventually overtake our base entirely. When we chop down trees, pink goo will appear to restore them. Whatever this stuff is, it reacts to our presence, becoming more prolific the greater our impact on the environment is. This is definitely one of the game's most interesting core features. For now, all it does is spawn useless crafting materials, but in the future, it might require the player to use strategies to limit the resource usage or combat the growth through special devices. Considering the theme of this game focuses largely on symbiosis, it could also be about finding ways to integrate ourselves into the ecosystem rather than fight against it. Gear progression is also really basic at the moment. You can craft knives and swords out of stone, and you can strap chunks of wood to your body to serve as armor, but once you have that, you don't really need to worry about combat for the rest of the playtest. We can tank most hits without any concern, and basic tools put out enough damage to kill just about everything in a couple of hits, so needless to say, there's gonna need to be some balancing changes. That aside, the animations are decent and the weapon impacts are really satisfying. The archery mechanics are pretty spot on as well, so I could see combat becoming a major part of the gameplay. While exploring, I came across several areas marked as dungeons, so I'd expect the main loop to be gearing up for expeditions into these dungeons to progress the story. The first dungeon I went into was really just a big long tunnel filled with giant silkworms and a relatively weak boss at the end. The second one introduces us to the massive ruins left by whatever aliens built this place. The visuals here were pretty awesome, but the loot was very lackluster, and the lack of variety turned the lengthy crawl into something of a slog. Big dungeons are great, but running around clubbing the same worm 500 times is really not. After solving a few simple puzzles, we faced a massive version of one of the previous bosses who dealt a moderate amount of damage. But to be honest, it was mostly just me bullying the poor thing and chasing it around with a big stick. Point being, the threat level needs a serious bump. On the other hand, we did get access to a cool new set of abilities when our character abruptly found themselves symbiotically infected by whatever fleshy goop is spreading through the planet. The system reminded me a lot of Prey, and considering the themes of the game, I don't think it's a stretch to assume that the more we make use of these alien abilities, the less human we'll become. But then again, the first power was telekinesis. Like, come on, who wouldn't grow a tentacle or two to move stuff with their mind? That was pretty much where things left off, so let's get into my theories here. My knee-jerk reaction to seeing the pink goop appearing after I cut down a tree was that the whole place is part of a single collective organism. Hopefully the story is a little less predictable than that, but I couldn't tell you for sure. Considering the numerous terrestrial plants thriving here, it could be that these aliens seeded Earth to grow humans for this organism to bind with, but again, I have no real inkling of where the narrative is going. And so, we circle back to my major issues with the game. The inventory is buggy, the building system is frustrating, and combat is way too easy. But this is a playtest, so that's all pretty normal, though it obviously should be fixed by release. The real issue that stuck out to me was that this game lacked any real personality. Most of the cool looking plants are just for decoration, they're not hostile, you can't use them for anything interesting, and everything else is just some offshoot of plants from Earth. The alien ruins were pretty cool, but I've played Subnautica and about 100 other survival games, so I know that story already. Survival was involved, but it's more tedious than anything else, and I didn't even feel like finishing my first house. In all, it just wasn't a game where I felt compelled to explore, and for an open world game like this, that is death. I want to see reactive plants that can be just as dangerous as they are useful. I want to see massive alien creatures stalking around at night that we have to hide from at first. I want to see a dynamic environment where the time of day and weather are different than Earth. Admittedly, it's really easy to forget you're underground or even on Mars. The only thing that reminds us of that is the distant cavern walls and the odd tentacle flower. That said, the pink goo and the mutation powers could shake things up quite a bit. But even with that, there needs to be more to the world itself, not just making it look nice. A lively, interesting world is the lifeblood of this kind of game. The player needs a reason to explore. It could be to find powerful loot, uncover interesting lore, or just see a really cool location. Ideally, you'd have all three of these draws, but let's start with one at least. I wouldn't say I'm entirely convinced by this one yet, but this is just the first of hopefully many versions along this game's path to 1.0. So I'd say keep an eye on this one if you're interested and see how it develops. Anyway, I'm just the voice in your head, so what do you think about Blind Descent? Is the beauty of the world enough to pull you in, or do you want something deeper? Does the story feel too thin, or do you think this could be the next Subnautica? What changes would you like to see in the finished version? Let me know what you think down in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. If you enjoyed this video, leaving a like or a comment helps me out a ton and keeps those obnoxious birds off my house. If you want more, subscribing is the best way to support the channel and keep new content coming your way, because I put out new stuff every week. Thanks so much for listening to me today. You'll be hearing from me again real soon. That is so gross. Look at it. Ew. Why does it come out of there like that?